We're on. So, hello everyone. My name is Star, and this is Star's Galactic Conversation. And I'm here today with Chris Burke of Storehouse. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Star.
How you doing?
I'm doing
So,
well.
can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris?
My name is Chris Burke. I was originally born in Chicago, born and raised on the South Side. I played every ball sport under the sun growing up. I attended Ohio State University where I studied civil engineering. Graduated longer ago than I'm going to admit here on camera.
Okay.
Since I graduated, I've spent a lot of time teaching and counseling high-risk students back home in Chicago, as well as a lot of personal training and fitness. And eventually in 2012 moved to Denver, Colorado, where at the end of 2013 an opportunity to jump into the cannabis industry presented itself. So put on my bathing suit and dove in.
Oh, okay. So what gave you that interest to say, okay, this is the industry that I want to be in? Because to me, cannabis industry is part of the health and wellness community. And, you know, we need to bring that to attention to a lot of people because sometimes we get into conversations with people and I'm like, no, I'm a part of your community as well.
Yeah, yep. You know, and it's funny you say that because that's exactly that's how I got interested in cannabis, and that's what drew me to it. You know, at a very young age, I connected with cannabis, and it became a very useful tool to me, but there was still all of that stigma and these crusty old ideas about killing brain cells and gateway drugs that seem very dated and silly now. But, you know, I've always been very health conscious, and like I mentioned before, my previous career was very oriented to personal training and, you know, triathlon and endurance racing and all this stuff. So, you know, cannabis has always kind of played a very important background role to me in that aspect. And, you know, that's why when the opportunity presented itself to jump into the cannabis industry, I found it really exciting because there is now this opportunity to help change that narrative around cannabis, make the story more in line with the truth rather than as it's been told previously. So, you know, throughout my, like I said, since I was a young kid, I've been using cannabis, and, you know, most of what I've done or most of my interest wouldn't align with someone that traditionally was associated as a cannabis consumer. So I finally had an opportunity to kind of, you know, do something that was going to be very challenging professionally, had a, you know, essentially a ceilingless opportunity because who knew what was going to happen at the end of 2013. And you know, I just decided to jump in because it was something that really meant a lot to me, and I'd seen the benefit it could provide. I'd experienced the benefit it could provide. And I'm a little bit rebellious by nature, so I like to do what people tell me I shouldn't do if it's something I think that could be beneficial and is the right thing, you know?
So how did you become aware that cannabis could help you, like if you consumed prior to working out, as far as endurance or as far as energy and, you know, stamina? Like, how did you know that those qualities would be able to be brought out with the cannabis?
Well, I mean, really that probably started in high school. One of the things I used to do, you know, I was always an athlete growing up, and I would have small off seasons, or towards the end of high school after I'd kind of left really competitive club soccer and some of these other things behind, and I was, you know, essentially just getting ready to go to college, so I wasn't playing sports 7 days a week. I was, you know, when I was 18, I still wanted to look good naked and be attractive to girls and that kind of stuff, so I was going to the gym a lot, and me and my friends would smoke a little bit on the way to the gym, and for some reason it just really connected, and I, you know, that was the seed that started it, and then, you know, taking that from there,
became a ritual.
And now, you know, and that's not to say that it always hits that note, because cannabis can actually distract you, which is a useful tool in the right setting when you're going for the right thing. But you know, once you learn how to use the tool and you start understanding a little bit more about the terpenes and the cannabinoid profiles and genetics, then you can start
And the
to avoid
repairing
that.
of muscles and, you
Yep.
know, all of that kind of good stuff.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the post-workout benefits are tremendous as well, you know. I mean, unwind, especially if you end up working out after work or later in the evening, it can take a while to kind of come back down,
Right,
you know, and then all of a
right.
sudden it's midnight before you're going to bed. Cannabis can unravel a little bit of that and accelerate the recovery, you know.
Yeah.
It's all about inflammation at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
cannabis reduces it, so it
That's
helps.
true. That's true. I used to have that problem when I would work out after work, you know, to relieve the stress.
Yep.
It's like now I'm wide awake.
Yeah, now
Now
10
what do I
o'clock
do?
at night and I'm all jazzed up.
Yeah, like, no, not good.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Yeah, I wish I had some cannabis then. Okay. So since you've been in the industry for a while, and especially with it being relatively new to Maryland, you know, we just went through the first year. What kind of challenges are we having with advertising in the cannabis industry?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, just the number of outlets we have access to. You know, we just don't have the same availability as any other business. There's restrictions on Google and running Google ads, or you know, some of these other paid formats of online advertising we're not able to access. We're very restricted in, you know, in terms of being able to team up with other businesses or have events at other businesses. Many events and markets and things like that don't want to allow cannabis to be involved, so
Okay.
we don't have access to those.
Okay.
You know, and there's just a much more limited number of outlets is really the biggest thing.
The only thing I ever see is the cannabis industry magazines.
Yep.
So are there other ways that I'm just not aware of right now that we're advertising?
You know, I think part of the reason there's some more traditional publications that have stuff. I think we don't see a lot of cannabis companies trying to dive into those necessarily, just because it is fairly limited. It's fair, you know, like we're a small company at Storehouse. We
Right.
don't have $35,000 to spend every month on marketing.
advertisement,
So to pay $2,000 for a quarter page ad in a public or traditional
Right,
magazine
right,
is a
right.
tough spend.
Right.
But then on top of it, you know, I think there's a little bit of a hesitation too, because there's been a lot of legislation and rules chewed on and tossed in and thought about, like restricting even the size of signs allowed outside
I
of
was
stores.
going to bring up the billboard signs too.
Exactly. So
That we see downtown Baltimore.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think there's some companies, and most companies in general, don't want to toe that line and do something that's going to, you know, have the MMCC or
Bring
some
attention
governing
to
body.
themselves, right?
Exactly. Come in saying like, well, you're not technically not allowed to do this,
but
but you're also not allowed to do it.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
you know, and ultimately we're all at the mercy of, you know, these regulators' decisions in these occasions where there isn't a real hard line rule to abide. So most companies, and us included, try to just stay away from that gray area and do what we know 100% we're safe, it's legal, we're not going to raise any eyebrows or offend anyone or, you know, anything like that. So I think that's probably why you don't see too much in the traditional. But you are starting to see some billboards, and those are some of the bigger companies. You know, they've got a little bit more money for it, and
Right.
willing to absorb that risk a little bit more. But
And they do make the paper because there's always a controversy when somebody's putting up a billboard. Somebody's trying to make them take it down.
yeah, exactly. It's that
how
second
they
round
say
advertising.
Right. There's nothing
That's
that's negative
Yeah,
advertising.
exactly.
Everybody's talking.
Yeah, half the people who never saw the billboard know about it because it's in the
Now,
paper
right,
now.
exactly,
Yeah. So
exactly.
that might be the right play, actually.
Yeah.
I have to bring that
Okay.
up in a meeting soon.
So that was definitely a challenge, advertising a challenge. What have you seen as some of the gains that we have accomplished over the past year in the cannabis industry?
Over the past year, I mean, for one, just the openness of the community as a whole around, you know, Maryland and Baltimore since I've been here has dramatically changed. You know, the openness to cannabis being an option for treating some of these symptoms and people going through cancer treatments and things like that, as well as just the social stigma, just really has relaxed, you know, and I saw the same thing happen in Colorado quite a bit over the years, and I think that's what will always happen is once people have the freedom to try this tool, there will be people who abuse it and don't use it correctly, as always.
Right.
But what we'll see is that it just becomes another thing. And if you are interested in cannabis, it'll be there and you'll all of a sudden find this whole community built around it. And if you're not interested in cannabis, you won't seek it out and you won't even know it's there.
It won't bother you.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly. So I think the biggest thing I've noticed is that there's a much less of an edge. You know, it seems like the people who disagree with it, sure, fine, I disagree. It doesn't affect me.
But it's not bothering me.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Exactly. And the people who do
So
support
they're being
it.
tolerable.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And the people who do support it are continuing to come into that legal market, which is really important. Is you know, because there's a lot of people who advocate for it, or who, if you talk to them one to one, are all about you're really advocating.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people who believe in it but won't participate.
Won't speak out.
Won't
Right,
speak out.
exactly.
Exactly.
And that's the part where I'm spending a lot of time, as you know, trying to get rid of the stigma, trying to get us talking. And as part of this podcast, you know, having other conversations that's going to happen from the podcast and afterwards.
Yep.
And then, because to me, the more people are educated, the more people are talking about cannabis, the more people we are helping.
Yep.
You know, and opioid crisis, a whole different subject. We're going to take at least more than 1 hour on that alone. So we're not even going to try to attempt to touch on that right now.
Yeah.
But that's good stuff. That's good stuff to hear.
Yeah, it is. It's great to see just those little shifts in mindset where people who might have been opposed to it are open to it. People who are open to it are actually becoming advocates. People who are advocates are becoming patients and now participating. And once the patient base gets big enough, it's undeniable. You have 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 people, residents of the state, who have gone, not only do they believe in it, they've actually registered with the Medical Cannabis Commission to become a patient.
Right.
That's a powerful message,
It
you
is.
know,
It is.
and that matters.
Right. It does. It really does.
So that's why I always tell people, you know, even if it's something you believe in, if you consume cannabis, you know, you've got a buddy who gives it to you for cheaper than you can get in a dispensary, I understand that. But if it's something you truly believe in and want to be an advocate for and want to stop locking people in cages about,
Using natural medicine,
market,
right? Using cannabis.
You know, put your dollars into the market.
Wasted energy, people.
Yep.
We need to address violent crimes, situations like that. Let's leave the cannabis smokers alone, okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you. Please and thank you.
Yeah, less reasons to lock people in cages is unanimously a good thing in my opinion, especially for personal choices about plants.
Yes. Okay, so since, you know, we see the numbers growing, like you said, people are now becoming MMCC card holders, and I'm starting to see a lot of people asking about CBD products.
Yep.
Do you see that as a trend?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think CBD is the gateway to cannabis, we could say.
Okay.
But, you know, CBD has gotten a lot of the bandwidth on traditional news outlets, and you got Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and kind of that's the thing that everyone knows about cannabis, that is kind of like cannabis's sister. So that is very much, a lot of people are willing to consider CBD as a precursor to maybe getting into that
You
realm.
may not need the THC.
Exactly.
It's worth a try.
Yep, exactly. And you know, and especially now that you're seeing it Walgreens and CVS and all these different outlets, it makes sense that people are definitely asking more questions.
Right.
But with that, there's a lot deeper discussion than when it comes to getting cannabis products, because cannabis, when it's manufactured in these legal markets, is very regulated.
Tell 'em,
It's
Chris.
tracked. It's
It's tested from the farm through the process to the bottle or whatever container it's being packaged in. We are very lucky in the state of Maryland.
Yes.
Believe that.
Yes.
Everybody doesn't have that.
Yep. So a quality standard there.
Listen,
With CBD products, you got to be careful because there's a lot of nonsense out there. People are selling hemp oil and confusing people into thinking it's CBD oil,
right.
which not that hemp oil doesn't have some CBD content typically, but it is not the same thing. And there's a lot of static and just white noise around CBD products. So you got to do your research and dig in, figure out what company you're buying from, figure out where
they're
source
getting
stuff,
it from.
figure out what their manufacturing processes are.
Check them out on Better Business Bureau.
Exactly. Just be educated. You have to educate yourself in the CBD market because, again, it's not regulated. It's not treated the same as cannabis, which is better and worse. It's better because it's a more free-flowing thing, and you can bring CBD on an airplane, no one cares. But it is worse in the sense that you have a lot more mischief and secret snake oil being sold as opposed to a quality, dependable product.
And remember, you're putting this in your body.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
You don't know whether it has pesticides, molds and mildew, heavy metals. People,
Yep.
he just said the same thing I've been telling you.
Yep.
Okay?
And it is
All right.
interesting. One
You
of
heard
the
it from him.
Yeah, one of the coolest things about the hemp plant is that it can actually be used to rejuvenate soils. So they'll go into old industrial sites, and some of these plots of land that are now becoming hemp fields are fairly run down or they're dead soils, and they're planting hemp to rejuvenate them. The problem with that is hemp's pulling some of that trash out of the soil. It's pulling some of these toxins out of the soil. And
That's
if you
what
harvest
hemp does.
that,
It pulls the toxins out.
and if you go squeeze that hemp down and make oil out of it, some of
what?
whatever was in that soil is going to end up in that hemp oil. So that's why making sure you're sourcing it correctly. And we get a lot of good stuff from China. Hemp is not one of the good things we get from China, although we do get a lot of it. So stuff like that, just knowing, being your own advocate in terms of the CBD.
Diligence. Do your due diligence,
Yep.
please.
Absolutely. And and there's a lot of good companies doing it. So don't look for the cheapest bottle. If you're getting the cheapest bottle, you're probably getting the cheapest
Poor
product.
quality.
And the poor quality isn't just bad quality, it could be actually detrimental or actively unhealthy as opposed to not worth the money. It's actually bad for you. So, make sure US sourced. There's a ton of hemp coming out of Kentucky and Oregon and Colorado and California. There's a lot of good stuff. So just make sure you're finding the right companies, and they're sprouting up left and right. Just make sure you do your research.
Thank you. That was a very important message.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, was there anything that you wanted to bring to the table today to discuss in particular?
I got a couple questions for you because you've got an interesting path that you've been on, and you're in some of the very much the gray area of cannabis,
Right.
which is this weird situation where it might have truly powerful, life-changing abilities for people battling this disease, or even after the disease, or the treatment symptoms, whatever the case may be. There's a tremendous amount of benefit, and yet it is explicitly not allowed, or it's got to be done in secret, or there's all these complications.
Right.
So it's very difficult to find information. It's very difficult to find advocacy and have a doctor that understands all these components. How do you navigate that, or how did you navigate it, and what do you tell people?
Okay. To my benefit, I'm retired. I was disabled in 2014. I'm a cancer survivor. And from the cancer, I received chemotherapy. The chemotherapy gave me fibromyalgia and toxic myopathy, which left me in pain 24/7. So I was on opioids. I was on oxycodone 3 times a day. Placenta extended relief twice a day. 250 milligrams of that. 15 milligrams of the oxycodone 3 times a day. And then when that didn't work, which was at least 4 or 5 times a week, I had to take fentanyl. Yes, said fentanyl.
Oh my
When
God.
the fentanyl didn't work, I was ending up going to, and I'm trying not to get teary-eyed, to the emergency room 3 and 4 times a week. They would give me morphine.
Oh my God.
They would call my pain management doctor, what do you want me to do with her?
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah.
again, I have toxic myopathy, and they're putting more toxins in my body,
Yeah.
so I'm still in pain.
Yeah.
And my pain wasn't just like a 5 or 6. My pain was a 8 or 9, and with the opioids, it was a 7. So I had a very miserable time. I was bedridden. The only time I came out of my house was to go to my doctor's appointments, pain management, physical therapy, and I would go back home and go on my bed. It was a miserable time in my life. But my same pain management doctor told me that when medical cannabis became legal, that I would be one of the first people that he would give it to, because he just knew that I would be one of those people that would benefit from it. So, some people go, oh, that's the same man that gave you that poison? That's all he was allowed to give me at that time. He was trying to be humane. I was in pain, okay?
Yep.
But when a better option came around, that same man made sure that I was one of the first ones to get it. So, yes, I love that man.
Yeah, yep. And that's a story you hear a lot, actually, is the sad truth that a lot of doctors who might want to try other things are handcuffed by the system. You know, the standard of care, they're in their hospital and insurance networks, and they can't think outside the box. They're not allowed to do most of those things, and if they tried some of these things,
They could lose their
they're
license
facing
and
losing their license.
their
And-
livelihood,
Yep.
okay?
And med school ain't cheap. You know, you
And
gotta
this is what they've
go
been
into a lot
taught
of
their
debt to get
whole
that.
life,
Mhm.
is to give us pharmaceutical drugs. That's the only thing they've been taught. They haven't been taught about medical cannabis.
Yep.
They don't know the benefits of it.
Yep.
So don't be upset with your doctor. You know, and all the information that I gained was because as soon as the pain went away, which, you know, after I transitioned from opioids, I transitioned with cannabis. And then the cannabis, the way the cannabis works is it helped my symptoms. So it helped my inflammation, it helped get the toxins out of my body, it helped me have clarity, and then I was able to say, oh, this stuff is, let me find out as much as I can.
Yeah,
I found out about the different strains and, you know, what they were for, and I found out about consuming cannabis and the different forms, and it's just been so empowering. I mean, look at me today. Like, anybody who knows me and saw me before and they see me now and they're like, what is it? And I tell them, it's cannabis. It's just pure cannabis.
Yep.
And what a good feeling, because I even had, I told you, I had kidney failure.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah,
a
you did
side
mention.
effect from the opioids that I was taking. I had kidney failure and found out I only had 1 kidney.
It's a hell of a way to find out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. But I mean, just harping on your message and reinforcing the ideas, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's also an opportunity. We got to educate ourselves, you know, take control. We're not at the mercy of, you know, doctors, the healthcare system. We're not victims. Be empowered.
And the
take
information
control.
is out there. You
and
have
get
to
it.
look for it.
Yep.
You have to look for it, but
Yep.
it's out there.
Yeah, if you go looking, it's surprising how quickly you can find it if you're willing to go hunt it down. You know, and there's tons of people like you out
And
there
these
who
stories, I'm not
are promoting the
unique.
message.
I'm not unique.
You're unique, but there's a lot more people
There's a
out
lot of
there trying
stories
to fight for
similar
the
to
same thing
mine.
as you. Yep.
Similar to mine.
Yep.
And like I said,
And
you
there's
know,
new ones every day too.
if I was still working, I probably would have the same challenges as you with the THC and my employer, you know, so I understand that. And, you know, that's the beauty of CBD products.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, don't think you can't use cannabis. You just choose cannabis without the THC product.
Yep. And on top of it, and that goes back to that previous point of the more people who step up and say, hey, this is something I'm demanding my government allow so that I can have safe access to this. Eventually, we get enough people advocating,
Yes.
and it becomes undeniable, and suddenly we change the narrative and the laws surrounding these weird drug testing protocols. And
we get cannabis
you're gonna
off
lose
of
your job
Schedule
over.
1. Why should cannabis be on the same level as what, meth and heroin and
it should be on the same level as like tomatoes.
aspirin? A baby aspirin at that.
Yeah. I mean, it has
A baby
it has
aspirin.
essentially no toxicity. You cannot overdose on it. There's only a theoretical LD50 based on rat studies, and they weren't even
Nobody's
good
ever
studies.
died from cannabis, okay?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is the truth. And again, that's not to diminish, the intensity and the power of cannabis as a medicine.
It's a
And
powerful tool.
it's a very powerful tool. But, with great power comes great responsibility, and you have to manage it and all that. But let's not neglect the value of the tool just because it has some danger. If you hand, you heard me say this before, you hand 100 people a saw, a good chunk of them aren't going to do anything with it. They'll never touch it. A few
You have
people,
2 idiots.
yeah, exactly. A few people are going to build
Flipping it
homes with
around,
them,
right,
and a couple people are going to cut their arms off. But we don't outlaw saws because a couple people occasionally cut their arms off with them, because the value of the tool far outweighs the couple people who aren't going to manage the tool correctly. The important
They
part
wouldn't manage any
that-
tool correctly. I'm sure.
exactly. The important part is that the rest of us have access to it safely, and comfortably. We don't have to. We shouldn't have to worry about being locked in a cage. Shouldn't have to worry about
Doing it in
the safety
secret,
of
only in your
medicine.
house, only in your backyard somewhere. It's natural medication.
Yep.
There should be no shame. There should be
Nope.
no shame, no stigma. It's medicine.
Nope. Exactly. I mean, judge people on the quality of their character. On the content of their character, and don't worry about the other stuff. It's
Small things.
exactly. But we keep fighting the good fight here.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so was that the only question you had?
It was about. I mean, we could talk all day. I'd keep going, but
Okay, so I think we're ready to wrap it up for this session. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank
It's
you,
been great
Star.
seeing
you too.
And
Always
I'll be
a pleasure.
seeing you again. I'm sure we're gonna
Yeah.
have Chris back on because he is just full of information, as you can see. So
And once you wind me up, I don't stop either. So.
thank you again.
Thank you, Star.